Good morning, everyone. I welcome you on behalf of REHVA. I'm Hovorka, REHVA President, and I will ask Jasper or Spiridon to go through the housekeeping rules, please.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Spiridon, and together with my colleague Jasper, we will be your hosts from REHVA office. Before we start, I would like to remind some housekeeping rules. So the seminar will be recorded, and all the attendees will be sent the slides of today's session in the next days. All of you are muted by default, so please, if you want to submit any questions to the panelists, please use the Q&A section that you can find on the right side of your screen. And please use to all panelists function and to everyone, not privately. I hope you will enjoy the seminar, and I will hand over back the floor to REHVA President Hovorka. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I use this opportunity to thank very much REHVA staff who did a very great job in turning our usual Brussels summit into this virtual conference. So I welcome here all our panelists and speakers, and also a warm welcome to all the participants to this session. So we went through in the previous session, we went through a different research approach on the COVID-19 impact. And now the idea is with this second session is how to work on post-COVID impact in buildings and HVAC activities. And I will not take more time. And I will introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is Stefan Moser. He's now currently working at DG Energy. Stefan Moser joined the Commission in 2000. The first worked in DG Competition, then at DG Environment on climate and environment policy. And between 2009 and 2015, he dealt with policy coordination on climate, energy, environment, transport, and agriculture and maritime policies. So from 2015, he served as head of unit in DG Energy. First on energy security and safety, and now on energy efficiency of buildings and products. So, Mr. Stefan Moser, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hovorka. Frank, everyone, good morning. I'm very happy to be with you. I'm not going to share my presentation with you, and I'm very happy to be able then to exchange with you and also to listen, of course, to what the other participants will share with us. The renovation wave strategy is an action plan, so it is not solving anything in itself. It is preparing the ground for further actions to come, and it is a three-fold strategy, I would say. It is about the climate, energy, environment. But it is also about getting out of the crisis. It's about creating jobs and overcoming what we are experiencing now as significant difficulties for the economy, but also in particular for many people who have suspended, reduced significantly, or even lost their jobs during that time and might not be able to get back very soon or not at all anymore, some of them. And it's also about improving lives more broadly of people using public infrastructure, public buildings, but also their own buildings in which they live, which may not be of the quality which is necessary. So basically the three aspects: greening, creating jobs, and improving our lives. That's the key messages. Why renovation? Of course, I'm from DG Energy. I'm primarily in charge of energy efficiency. Without buildings, we will not be able to live up to our climate ambition of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by so far a target of 40% by 2030, and now with the Green Deal increased to 55% for 2030. Buildings consume about 40% of total energy, which is quite significant, and nearly as much they create greenhouse gas emissions. Lots of our buildings are old, so more than 20 years old, and are of course less efficient and consume much more energy than new buildings. At the same time, poverty is very much a reality for many Europeans, and that includes also energy poverty. So more than 30 million people have problems with paying their energy bills. And that, of course, has to be taken into account when renovating buildings, because the consumption of energy goes down, but at the same time, we have to make sure that renovations keep living space affordable. So don't, for instance, have an increase in rents as a consequence, which would not be bearable for those people who have problems anyway. What is also clear is that an enormous amount of money will be needed to reach the 2030 climate and energy targets. Of course, this is always based on modeling, but one figure which has been identified is 275 billion euros investment as a gap to reach 2030. And some of that, and a large part of that, is also for buildings. Then we have, as mentioned, the crisis. We have to get out of it. It's still ongoing. The sanitary health crisis is still ongoing. We're not yet even over it. But moreover, we have to get out of it in terms of economic response. And for that, we have the recovery and resilience plans, which play a very important role for renovations. And it's a win-win opportunity for the reasons which I just mentioned, linking our agendas on greening with the economic side and the social aspect as well. On the next slide, you see basically that what we are aiming for is really a transformative agenda to have climate neutral buildings, make them more resilient to extreme natural events, integrate them better into the energy system, and having a much more active role for them, making them smart. At the same time, think about system integration, notably in relation to transport, e-mobility, but also making them producers and consumers of local renewable energy. And the smart readiness of buildings is particularly important. We know that many devices will, of course, change over time, but at least the inbuilt infrastructure in a building has to be smart, has to be able to dog on to new smart devices, which will be developed over time. Some of them exist already, many of them exist, but they will, of course, change. We all know that innovation will lead to further improvements in that respect. So buildings have to be ready for that in order to play an active role in the energy system. We don't only look at individual buildings. What we need to emphasize more in the future are district approaches, neighborhood, community approaches, a much stronger role in thinking a bit bigger at local level, but thinking more integrated in order to create synergies and also have strategies developed involving neighborhoods, bringing people together really there. Otherwise, we will simply not make the step change which is needed. So this slide here summarizes a bit the key, I would say, principles which have to be taken into account when renovating a building. It's not just energy efficiency, even if I'm in charge just of energy efficiency and come from DG Energy, but it links all these aspects. And when it comes to renovation, it would be a lost opportunity if we did simply look at one aspect and not at the other. So it's basically energy efficiency, it's climate neutrality. Of course, it links then to greenhouse gases, the digital side, the twin transition, and renewable energy, but then also avoiding waste, thinking about the end of life of a building, a recovery of precious raw materials. So basically have a modular approach, what can be reused, and make sure that nothing will just be put into a dump site at the end of the building, or at least as little as possible. And then affordability, very important. It's not just the social aspect for poor people, which is extremely important. Affordability is also for the lower to medium income citizens, which struggle already today to make their lives in expensive cities, etc. So that is key. The key tools for that will be a very performing internal market, will be an upgrading of the capabilities of the industrial sectors to produce very high quality but also affordable materials for renovations, and of course also a sufficient number of skilled people which are able to do that, so to generate basically a higher performance of the building sector in order to create affordable renovations. Then also we have to look at the health and environmental aspects, avoiding harmful substances which are being used, indoor quality. Of course, very dangerous materials are still present in buildings, such as asbestos. They have to be taken out in a safe manner. All that has to be done for the interest of the people living inside, but also for the workers. And then last but not least, and I stress not least at all, probably extremely important for and even more so in Europe, a high architectural quality, which is a precondition for accepting changes. We have to take care of heritage buildings. We have to make sure that citizens accept the outcome of renovations as something worthwhile living in. And for that, I think a further effort needs to be made, really, that this will be ensured and that there will also be a broad involvement, consultation, participation of citizens in that respect, and of course also professionals who are able to steer such efforts. On the next slide, you see a bit the overall objectives. The main objective which we have in political terms is to at least double the annual energy renovation rate by 2030. So it will not be done from today until tomorrow. That's not possible. But to accelerate clearly the current energy renovation rate from now on until 2030, so that at least it will be doubled by then, and at the same time to increase the renovation depth. I cannot tell you yet exactly what that means. Many renovations are too shallow today. They are not using the full potential, but there may need to be a more in-depth or legal definition of that, what it means in the upcoming revision of the Energy Performance in Buildings Directive, for instance. So we may have to become more precise there, but clearly the potential of renovations has to be used more to the full when it comes to energy renovations. What will be the outcome is a significant reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by more than 50%. Here it's mentioned 60%. Then also the energy consumption as such should go down, and heating and cooling basically efforts would also go down by a significant figure. Renovation of building units would go up from, if we just continue on the current basis, from 25 to 35 million. So about 10 million more, but including more in-depth renovations. So this would not just be a figure from 25 to 35, but also more in-depth. And then, as I said, very important for the recovery, creation of new jobs. So 160,000 has been calculated as green jobs in construction, and with a very high return on investment for jobs. So about 12 to 18 local jobs, and to stress local jobs, can be created per million euro invested. We are now at a stage where we have already a very good framework in principle, but one which is not yet upgraded enough for the increased ambition of the Green Deal. We have the clean energy package from 2018 to 19, but this has been calibrated for a 40% climate target for 2030. So clearly this is not enough. It will be the basis. It will not be put into question. It has to be implemented very thoroughly, and will not be basically taken away. So we do not reduce our efforts to implement it, but it has to be upgraded significantly in order to get to the Green Deal ambition. And that basically is now the challenge, to overcome barriers which stand in the way of really making a further step change on renovations. And these barriers will be presented, and I will get to them very, very, very soon. Just on the decarbonization, I would like to stress that heating and cooling is a particularly important aspect and also a focus area of the renovation strategy, as more than 3/4 of heating and cooling is still today ensured by fossil fuels. And there needs to be a significant change as well. to electricity, to geothermal, to use really much more renewables, about 40% of renewables by 2030. And of course, decarbonize also the fossil fuels which are being used, notably gas. And gas, of course, can and will play a role, but of course, as decarbonized as possible. And there, particular efforts need to be made still as well. But from the hierarchy of the energy system integration, it's basically you think about energy efficiency first, then electricity and renewable energy, and then residual, basically gas. And that gas has to be decarbonized as much as is possible. In the renovation rate strategy, we have 7 lead intervention areas. One of them is, I would say, legislative, in order to improve the incentives and improve the information tools which we have. Another one, the second one, very important, funding, to make funding accessible and well targeted. The third one is technical, I would say, project and technical assistance. Then the fourth one is to have really smart buildings and have integrated interventions. Think about the bigger picture there also. The fifth one is making the construction sector more performing for a sustainable future, so improve the internal market, but also the skills and upgrade the skills and the number of people who can work in renovations, bringing them over from other sectors where they may not have any more the same employment opportunities as they had until the crisis, the COVID crisis, I mean. We don't know yet which structural changes will take place, but probably there will be some long-term ones, and that is an opportunity for those people. And then, as I already mentioned, partially energy poverty, healthy housing, but also affordability. And then the seventh one, decarbonization of heating and cooling. On the next, this is just repeating it basically. On here you see a bit the barriers, but also what we intend to do as primary solutions. So in relation to regulatory reactions, information and incentives, legislative, it's primarily about, I would say, mandatory emission performance standards, which are minimum energy performance standards, which are mandatory on the member states. They do exist already partly. Then the energy performance certificates and audits. On funding, we have 2 main fields of action and tools. One of the under the multi-annual financial framework and the recovery and resilience funds. Then on capacity, technical assistance, a very big emphasis will be on one-stop shops, really, to make sure that information flows together, that it's easily accessible for citizens and for the users. Then on sustainable construction, very important, thinking about the life cycle, having sustainable materials, but also digital data space, because without smart tools, it will not work. And then on heating and cooling, notably the EU ETS as a further financial incentive, but also the Energy Efficiency Directive and the Renewable Energy Directive to encourage the fuel switches and increase the share of renewables. Here, some summary on the focus areas, heating and cooling, I mentioned already, energy poverty as well. But what is important here, that member states have to really develop plans in the long-term renovation strategies, but also following the recommendation from the Commission Energy Poverty, which came out on the same day, on the 14th of October. Then there will also be an affordable housing initiative by our colleagues in DG GROW in the Commission. And then on public buildings. Public buildings are very important, they're exemplary, but they are not to be seen in an ideological manner. I think what is important is to make a broad assessment from the public side. It's not just about publicly owned, but also public service buildings, which are publicly supported or have a public mission, and see about what services they provide to citizens. Where can they be improved? One of them is certainly energy, and the other is quality of service for schools, hospitals, social care facilities, offices. Many of them are old. They are not anymore up to standard of today. And a big role will be here on public procurement. There will be guidance from the Commission and member states should develop milestones, but really prioritize first those where the biggest gains, the biggest added value from public investments can be made. And the last slide, just a summary on the EU budget. It will not be enough to have just public money. There will have to be a significant generation of private investments, combining private funds with public funds. And there are several tools. There's a special paper explaining from the Commission, published together with the Renovation Wave, how the different financing instruments can play together. And now, very important will be the recovery and resilience plans being drawn up by the member states to access the significant funds, which are still, of course, under negotiation, but as agreed at least by the European Council in July, but under negotiation still between the member states, the Commission, and the European Parliament, notably how precisely this will look in the future, but we are already preparing for it. The key thing is to prepare for the best possible absorption capacity of member states in substance, that they can use the money very effectively on the ground for renovations. And there, the emphasis on quality in substance, building on the long-term renovation strategies. And then there have been modules, templates being developed by our colleagues working on recovery in the recovery task force, and now DG in the Commission on that. There's also a very strong emphasis on research and innovation, Horizon Europe. We need to innovate a lot still, but also have to address market barriers and technical advice. You are all aware of the Elena facility, which can also be upgraded to have the best possible technical support possible from that side. So with that, I thank you very much for your attention, and look forward to the further discussions and the exchange of views later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moser, for this broad overview of the actual activities at European level. And I think we will have it's a complementary discussion. So I will directly give the floor to Mrs. Miapetra Kumpula-Natri. I hope I pronounced it well. Mrs. Kumpula-Natri is a member of the European Parliament representing Finland. She's a member of the ITRE Committee on Industry Research and Energy, where she has focused on energy and digitalization. She was involved in this report, Buildings Energy Efficiency Potential, approved by overwhelming majority by the European Parliament plenary session in September. And Mrs. Kumpula-Natri was a member of the Finnish Parliament and has been a member of Vasa Municipal Council for 20 years. So Mrs. Miapetra Kumpula-Natri will have to leave us just after her presentation. So please, if you have questions, send it on the chat in order for Mrs. Kumpula-Natri to answer if she has a couple of minutes after our presentation. Thank you very much again, Mrs. Kumpula-Natri, to be with us this morning. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you for the possibility to join you in this interesting and very timely debate. And thanks for Mr. Moser. I think the Commission and Parliament do share a lot of the ideas and have a common voice in many of the aspects. I must say that I inherited this shadow rapporteur place for this initiative that the speaker now mentioned on the energy efficiency in the buildings, as I was also last mandate working for the directive on the energy performance in the buildings. So this was very easy to jump in and continue. And I must say that many of these aspects that we raised in the Parliament opinions and then tried to put in this previous directive are now back and strongly in the Commission's preparation. So we are very happy to hear the real work on the energy poverty, to also not to look building by building, but take on board the district view, to tighten the energy goals, that it needs to be speed up. So a lot of good wordings from the Commission side, who will then propose the legislative proposals later, and that is very important. And we must say that COVID maybe also helps this sector as we see importance of the indoor air quality. It was very difficult to put something inside the directive last time because that was not very much focused on that one. And now we know that people like me, we work from home, and then all in all, people rest so much indoor that the healthy indoor climate is important. And we see the need to answer the energy usage in the houses, as we really have to meet the climate goals. And the digitalization, as planned as a strategy for Europe, growth strategy, as a green strategy is involved in the buildings as well. So we do have all the main targets of this term, that we want to have the climate, Green Deal as a growth strategy, the digitalization to help that, and then also look at the more social Europe. And this is why I think there is very timely call for renovations to happen. Also, if we put things right, the win-win-win meets this time very well, as it immediately brings local activities and requires jobs and creates more jobs. It also answers the climate needs and also improve the living of people. So win-win-win needs to be a goal all the time when we talk about it. So the report also took on board many issues on starting from circularity in the renovations and construction materials, life cycle calculation approach, healthy buildings, requirement for enhanced digitalization and community approach. All this was having a broad support from the European Parliament. And we, of course, hope that Commission will take this guidance seriously, and what I now heard was very good and in line, and communication has been very tight in between Commission and Parliament. And as the renovation wave now given out is a strategy paper, I always want to ask that whether it has enough teeth. And the question is actually, what can Europe do, and how we can boost, because so much happens on the local level. And as local level, it goes beyond the member state level. It goes very much to every house and building, as we know, but still the member states have been not very active on this one. We saw the renovation rates remain very low still. The Commission estimate was annual rate of 1%, and renovation wave wants to double it. My own party, SD in the Parliament, we are having a preparation for the own strategy to tackle this even more, and at the moment we're thinking the even tripling and longer, what also the European Energy Efficiency Directive is aiming. That was now only concentrating on the central governmental buildings, giving the some 3% rate there, and it is very small and targeted actions when we only concentrate on the central governmental building. So, but then it is all at the same time here time to call the member states to really get on board. Parliament is on board, the Commission is on board, and we need the Council and member states. And then if it's still only half of the member states who submitted their long-term renovation strategies, it is a very pity, because yes, we will do the legislation now, and too often I hear that you cannot have one-size stockings for a Maltese and Finnish Lapland and maybe the Alps and then the bigger in the middle of the big city. So that's why we wanted to have these long-term renovation strategies by member states, so that it remains the knowledge of the regional differences. But if we will not get them from the member states, it's very hard to take on board. So really wish that they could be provided. And also as part of the EPPD, the member states strategies should also be being done together with the stakeholders. So consultation was actually built in the idea, and that's why I think it's very, very important to have it too. Almost all the keywords was said in the previous presentation, but participatory agendas here is very important for the Parliament. So we wanted the people get on board planning their regions and neighborhoods, as well as their own houses, so much to take on board the SMEs and the construction sector. So this is very important as we go very close to the citizens. So having this also the indoor healthy, my title, seeing that indoor life that we have 80–90%, I think I fit the average, even though I go hiking in the tent in the summertime and enjoy time with the dog outdoor. It is still the healthy buildings that is very important issue. We know that a few symptoms of the discomfort from indoor come thermal, acoustics, or visual, or especially air quality. They reduce the work performance of the occupants and then productivity and health. So we can see the WHO estimates that 500,000 Europeans die prematurely every year because of the poor indoor quality and climate. And then indoor environmental quality matters in many ways. It is a question of health, but also decent living condition and productivity of the work. So you have very nice buildings that are for rich, that are unhealthy, but then also it goes easily with the energy poverty as well, that they are not renovated houses. And we call very much to having the target to have the cost estimations and the strategies for the social housing, so that renovation doesn't happen too often, and then the bills are not forcing people to move out. So how can we reduce the energy bills at the same time if we do not do the energy renovations is a good question, and finance systems there needs to be tackled locally as well. So I embrace the banks that offer cheaper loan if you have a good energy efficiency already in the buildings, and similar ideas are many across Europe, not very many in the European level though. So already mentioned the 34 million Europeans who are unable to afford keeping their home adequately warm is a very concrete example of the poverty. And too low temperatures cause uncomfortable conditions, and what is more severe also risk their health. So also public buildings such as schools, hospitals and nurseries should be in the top, and I know very many cases. For example, in Finland it has been catastrophic. It needs to be a catastrophic situation before the new houses are given, often, sometimes to schools, sometimes even the hospitals. So also the indoor air quality is a question of mold, which is well-known problem in many buildings around Europe. Mold is dangerous for the people who are living in the moist and poorly ventilated apartments and house, and it is eternal, whether the fault is by the constructor or is it how to keep the house or the users. So it doesn't help the people living in there that you just keep on finding who's in charge. The whole chain needs to be in proper hands. So the mold causing the respiratory problems, including asthma, will of course then increase burden for the healthcare systems, and then the cost will be just moved. So all in all, the building renovation projects should always lead to healthy, mold-free buildings and should take into account the indoor environmental quality when planning the renovation or building a new house. It is important to ensure measures to improve the energy performance in the buildings that do not focus only in the building envelope, but include all relevant elements and technical systems. Therefore, I wish the Commission will access the need to propose a lot of guidelines for healthy indoor quality indicators. I'm personally applauding a use of the wood in the houses, and I know many are looking at even everything natural-based materials for the buildings. As this is not the case for 100% of the European future buildings or renovation, it is important to increase the know-how and understanding how indoor environmental quality is taking on board when designing all sorts of new buildings and renovations. Closure of natural openings, use of construction materials which are not tested properly and certified, or uncomfortable temperature usage, humidity, chemical and biological pollutions, and others. They are factors which may lead to unwanted outcomes, and it is very costly then looking them only afterwards. So related to the renovation, it is important properly assess which conditions exist in the building and take into account all dimensions related to well-being of the occupants. The very latest that I heard is that we do still lack the update of the energy construction, the construction materials and construction guidelines, for example, updated to existing climate conditions. We do not need to be a scientist or a climatologist to understand that humidity has changed when you look at the yearly averages and temperature changes and the weather conditions. So even following strictly the existing rules might be out of date. And there we see that European Commission promise for the new building materials proposal needs to take this in account. And I hope that we can also create better building materials markets in Europe that could then make them also quickly taken to the market if new innovations is there, so that they can be trusted and properly tested and certified, so that using them would then help this win-win-win. And this is the European level action that we can do. At the same time, I also want to see that as a part of the climate policy, we will still continue research and innovations and even thinking of the exports. If we very shortly look at the global situation, if it so happens that Biden will win the US elections, there will be a $2 trillion, so 1.7 trillion euros transition program for energy, and not only on the US continent, but on the technologies and their ideas to start exporting. If we see the China 2060 climate neutrality and the China's activities on so many technological solutions that they are ahead in the panels, in the electrical vehicles. So I want to see also the Europe have a strategical ideas that which are the expertise that we want to do. And this is the question for the sector. Is there something on the building construction sector that we have to have this or could have this external plan for exports, or is it that we will just be the place renovating and using materials or innovations or technological solutions from elsewhere, or can we create and keep it in Europe, the sector of the industry side of this one? So the last part also what I want to emphasize here is the update, the skilling program, what we do have. I don't know if you have a country that it is easy to build environmental and climate-friendly innovations. Is it somewhere a paradise that all the engineers working on the sector, or the planners, architects, and even the construction site workers, that they have updated the skills for the needs of today? I think it is not very easy to even find if you want, and how can we inform the citizens better, or the renovation orders, those who want to renovate. So I think there we really must see that the whole sector support these climate conditions, energy efficiency needs, but also the third part is the circularity. And there I'm maybe the most worried that it is not included in the whole sector as deeply as it should, that everything should be possible to circulate. And then using the circulate material is only one part. We see the waste streams coming from the construction sites, and then properly planned, we will not also meet the circularity goals that we need to. So this is from my side, and it was longer than I wanted, but then also the whole concept is very broad. Still, I think we have to concentrate on some topical discussions, and I call for the European level to choose what we do, and then what is left for the local actors. And I hope that many member states will use the recovery funds also on this sector to meet these win-win-win targets.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Kumpula-Natri, Miapetra. It was very broad, as you said, but very interesting because it gives the scale of effort and indeed also bring us the targets where we have to focus on. And our industry clearly has a challenge to propose new developments, and together researcher, engineers, industry have to work together to really speed up the renovation rate, as it was mentioned previously. Anita, do we have questions for Mrs. Kumpula-Natri, Miapetra?
Yes, I would like to summarize some questions from the questions above and received in the feed. So the most important is for our ears that the ITRE report, the KUFE report, proposes some recommendations on indoor climate and indoor air quality and healthy buildings. Also defining some criteria. So how this could be translated into EU policies?
We cannot initiate. We hope the Commission take the ball and then will propose it, and then the Parliament will take part in the trialogues to do it. But yes, our idea was that there needs to be clear parameters to be then measured and then compared. And I think it will be or have to be in the building materials as well, and then also when giving the best practices, so that they will take on board all these aspects, the indoor health and then the energy at the same time, not compromising the goals on the climate that we need, but not also causing the problems that may lead to the buildings that are not livable after mold or other unhealth cases occur.
Thank you. You also mentioned digitalization as an important transformation you need to go. What does this mean? And there was a recommendation regarding the building passport. If you could elaborate on this.
Yes, from the previous EPBD, there was this digitalization, at least in one part very clearly. It was this building automation control systems. That is a system built on the digitalization. And that was not compulsory at all, but then Parliament changed it, and then we got it through. But then it was like only when it's non-residential and very big, I don't remember by heart how many cubic meters the house needs to be. And then you can say that it is compulsory to have the building automation control, so that you cannot trust on the people closing the lights if it's the office building and then use the full energy load on the weekends when it's fully empty, for example. So these kind of systems, I think the EPBD next time will set the goal lower, because that will easily bring back the investment in 5 to 10 years in many cases if you haven't even started. Is it the shopping center or office building or the school? So this is one way. I don't know, for example, in the European Parliament, we have difficulties with the office lights after 10 p.m. because it's not functioning, the system, and at the same time you have sometimes there like a plus 27 degrees and you really cannot help it. So it's also the matter of technology needs to be well in place. But then these kind of examples are very, very clear. But then nowadays we also talk about the smart buildings, and then it's quite urgent to have there some kind of APIs and standards to be used. Otherwise it will be depending from who you buy the freezer, if it ever can be taken on board to the electrical system and management in the house. So this is for me also the idea. And then as already not to concentrate on the equipment by equipment, house by house, but then the region or the neighborhood is interesting too. The building passport and have it in the digital form is also to inform all the players, namely the one living in the house, the one renting the house, for the both sides, then to having transparent information of the conditions then, and then also for the planning, how the house is kept and should be done. In Finland, we have the legislation that you have to have a plan for a house for years to come, and then when you buy house, that you are more aware of the renovation needs and plans that house has. So that is not only pleasant if you're owner that will be given out the information, but that is also a very important tool to look at it. So why not to put it in the digital form? It can then also be helpful for different parts and players. From the last mandate, also the idea was on the EPBD that try to give more information of the building so that the whole block could be then come in, that once you renovate one house and not the next door house, it could be cheaper to offer a more strategical industrial scale on the renovations. And I think that will be win-win, because it is not only the market players that you want to do expensive different ones, because then you can skip many phases, like the planning on one, you can continue the next one and make also the workforce to be used efficiently. So these are the ideas that we hope to have something more concrete also, but then of course knowing the challenge that not everything can be dictated on the European level, but it may not mean that we are very lazy and only depending on the nationals, as for example the materials are free in the markets, the flows are free. So some kind of standardization and help there could be given from the European level.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'm looking at the incoming question. We have time maybe for the last one before you let you go. There are some questions about the ETCs, or maybe the digital, so what information we give to occupants about their buildings, and whether these indoor air and indoor environment quality should be there, and if what is the Parliament's position on that? How much?
Parliament position on the indoor air quality, or what?
Yes, whether in the EPC, the performance certificates, or any other maybe digital tools that the occupants are using, indoor climate quality and other criteria could be also added, and if the report tackles these ideas as well.
Yes, the indoor is there, and then I have been active on that one, because it's very heated, the debate in some countries like mine, and then I noticed that some countries the debate is not heated, so people do not require for the better indoor conditions, and sometimes I'm said that the problem is more in the Nordic countries where you have winters and summers and the big change, but then some countries, they do have wet all the time indoors, so maybe that doesn't cause the mold, but that it's not necessarily healthy. So of course there are different conditions, and then I even learned about the dew points when building the balconies, and so I'm not architect, my sister is, and learning a lot there. But then this is kind of having the big picture in mind, even when doing the renovation, and the energy is a goal here. So Parliament is in general calling for the role of the citizens to be looked at inside. So that is then of course the knowledge, and that is the way that Europe can do it, is to increase the knowledge on the parameters on the markets, for example. So I very much hope that you do remember these questions when Moser will be back on the speaking time, because we also wait from the Parliament that Commission will come with the proposals that are concrete. And then for the member states, the message is that if they do not want to be on board, do not complain then, or do not stop the trilogues then, if you didn't even propose your own strategies, that we can base the planning of this very important sector in the years to come.
Thank you very much, Miapetra. That's a very clear message, and yes, I guess we will come back to this with the panel and with Stefan later. So thank you very much. That closes the questions, and floor is back to Frank.
Yeah, thank you very much again. Thank you for your direct speech and comments, and we are very pleased to have you this morning, and thank you again for your participation. I will now open the floor to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Oliver Rapf. Oliver is the Executive Director of Buildings Performance Institute Europe since 2011. It's a Brussels-based think tank focusing on energy and built environment. And Oliver has several roles and is very active as a jury member of Environmental and Sustainability Awards and serves on various advisory boards. So Oliver, thank you very much for your participation, and I leave you the floor for your presentation. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Frank, and good afternoon, good morning, everybody. I think it's a very exciting event which you have put together here, Frank, and your team, with over 200 participants. That's an excellent number for a web-based event. In my presentation, I want to move now on the member states. We heard from Stefan Moser from the European Commission. We heard from Miapetra what the Parliament thinks, and even though we're a Brussels-based organization, BPIE does a lot of analysis what member states are doing in implementing energy-specific legislation in buildings. And so what we have done in the past few months is we had a closer look at some of the national long-term renovation strategies which have been submitted. We have a cutoff date of mid-September, and by that date we had 12 national renovation strategies submitted by the member states and 2 regional ones, one from the Brussels region and one from Flanders here in Belgium. And so we had an analysis looking at various aspects, and today I want to look at the aspect of healthy buildings and how that topic is covered in these national long-term renovation strategies, or LTRS as we call them in our acronym speak. I don't think I need to talk a lot about indoor environmental quality. The audience is an expert audience. We know that all these topics are very important: comfort, well-being, productivity, and health, and they're all directly related to the indoor air quality, to the acoustic performance, the availability of daylight and thermal comfort. I'm not telling you anything new here. And we also know that these benefits can be measured with monetary indicators. They can be measured with economic value. We, for example, know that if we would have highly performing office buildings all over Europe, we would increase the labor force productivity by up to 12%, providing us with a value of around about 500 billion euro per year across the EU. We also know that students and pupils perform much better when they have proper indoor air quality, proper daylight availability in the schools and in the classrooms, and the evidence is there that the educational performance could be accelerated by 2 weeks per year, which is in particular interesting in these times when a lot of the education is not happening because of school closures and so on and so forth. We also know that there are very positive impacts and effects in energy efficient hospitals, reducing the recovery time, and of course we have all the climate change benefits, the saved energy costs, reduced energy bills. So we have a lot of evidence about all these benefits, and that is why the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive makes quite clear requirements on these points. And I want to talk today about energy poverty, because energy poverty is directly related to the health of building occupants. And second, I want to talk about to what degree member states reflect the importance of healthy buildings and indoor air quality and a high indoor environmental quality in their national long-term renovation strategies. And the EPBD, as I said, has very clear requirements on that. Now, looking at what member states have published in their national LTRS, we find that all member states, which we analyzed, so 14 different strategies, as I said in the beginning, they realize and acknowledge the important connection between a high energy performance and healthy buildings. So that is already good. Second, the member states say that tackling energy poverty is an important contribution to improve the health of occupants. For example, by reducing mold and condensation and improved comfort. So this is also clearly acknowledged. Some member states even describe the risks from poorly implemented renovation activities, in particular in relation to the level of ventilation, which is often, or not often, which can be sufficient after if it's not properly executed. So some member states recognize that as well and describe it as a potential risk of renovation. But if we then look across the board of the analyzed LTRS, the 14, which you see in the columns, you simply have the countries and regions which we analyzed listed here in alphabetical order, from Austria in the first column to Sweden in the last column. And we scored all the national renovation strategies on a scale from 0 to 5, 0 meaning that the topic is not covered at all, it's missing in the national long-term renovation strategy, and 5 is a exemplary coverage. So that's where these points between 0 and 5 come from. And if we then look at this first ellipse, the first circle there, 1D, that's the requirement to cover the topic of energy poverty and to describe strategies to fight energy poverty. We see hardly any green squares in that line, 1D, meaning the majority of countries have maybe an adequate or an inadequate coverage of the topic. Only only 3 countries achieve a score of 4, meaning that they have provided a good coverage of the topic. If we go to line 1G, and that's the second circle further down, this is the requirement to quantify the expected energy savings through the national renovation strategy, but also to quantify the wider benefits, the non-energy benefits, such as health benefits. And there we find a worse picture. There is exactly one strategy, the Spanish one, which has done an exemplary job. And all the others have done a rather superficial job. That's just the dire reality, and that gives us some indication that despite this commitment and the recognition of the importance of the issue and the problem, when it comes to a quantification of the benefits and a real description of strategies, the member states don't do that well, unfortunately. Now, I would like to give you some examples of what member states have done. And I want to start with the best example, which is the Spanish long-term renovation strategy. It's the only strategy which we found fully compliant with all the requirements of the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. We see that in all topics. So when it comes to the health aspects, the Spanish LTRS concluded that the foreseen renovation of 1.2 million homes in Spain would prevent 80,000 people having or moving to a bad or a very bad health situation. It would also prevent that 96,000 people would be diagnosed with cardiovascular problems or diseases. And that would mean that on average, the public administration would save €370 per annum, per year, and per home in health and labor support costs. And it would also mean that the number of additional winter deaths due to cold temperatures in the home would be reduced. These numbers, these deaths currently amount to over 7,000 annual additional deaths in Spain alone this year. These are all the figures quoted in the Spanish LTRS, and that means that the Spanish authorities have given that topic quite significant thought, and they have developed in other parts in the long-term renovation strategy adequate measures to fight the problem and to realize these benefits. So in our opinion, in our analysis, that's the best example of 14 strategies which we analyzed. Looking at Denmark, we find a very different description and a very different situation, which is absolutely fine because the countries are, of course, different and they come to different policy solutions. The important point is to understand whether the country has seriously thought about the topic and has ideas how to address the topic. And the Danish authorities have decided to establish a new system of heat billing, heat expenses, what they call a dynamic heat account, where the heat expenses are not just billed according to the energy which is consumed, but according also to the meshed indoor climate, in particular the temperature, the humidity, and the CO2 content in the air, so that these issues are taken into account and to motivate the tenants to choose a good indoor climate, because this is obviously important for good health. Now, this is a pilot project which has been established together with public housing companies and organizations, so for social housing mainly, and we will have to see about the results, but it's an innovative idea which one member state is suggesting. In Ireland, we see that the Better Energy Warmer Homes program, which has been run for a number of years already, is especially targeting elderly and vulnerable people, and is providing a program to make these homes more comfortable, healthier, and more cost-effective to run. And all this is properly evaluated by the Irish government and is described in research outputs and in all kinds of publications, and it's a consolidated element of the national long-term renovation strategy of the country. I'll move to another country, to Finland. Finland has recognized early on, as also Miapetra described earlier, that renovation solutions can be the cause for poor indoor air quality. They don't have to be the cause, but it can be a negative consequence if the renovations are not properly implemented, and has already, back in 2009, launched a program to eliminate humidity and mildew problems in buildings, and has provided information and instructions how to resolve this problem in residential buildings in particular, and has just reconfirmed that this work will continue in a national indoor and health program addressing the issues. Not much more detail is given in the strategy, but at least one can see that it is recognized to a certain degree and that the government is aware of the problem and that it intends to address the problem. But as all these different national renovation strategies are, have been submitted in different levels of details, one cannot necessarily compare one to the other on the content, which is why we have chosen to evaluate the national renovation strategies along the requirements of the EPBD. In Austria, we have.
I would like you to if you can, in the next 2 minutes, go to the conclusion. Thank you very much.
I will, Frank. I will be done in 2 minutes. Not a problem. Austria, just very quickly here, the authorities have recognized already since 2011 that required building passports, which are necessary to access funding, need to cover the issue of health and comfort. And the Brussels capital region, which is my last example of the member, well, it's not a member state, it's a region, the last example of the analyzed renovation strategies, has developed quite a number of steps and a significant program to address the issue, and has defined very clear objectives for the coming years. The first 5 years focus a lot on public awareness raising and educating people. Then by 2030, public authorities are required to use only labeled products and materials guaranteeing low emissions of chemical pollutants in buildings. And by 2050, the Brussels capital region wants to make sure that all buildings have a high indoor air quality. Now, this is a long time away, I personally find. I think we should move faster, but the good thing is the Brussels capital region has defined these objectives. In my conclusions, I want to say that healthy and the topic of health in buildings is in principle recognized by the national long-term renovation strategies as a benefit of renovation. However, it's only the case in some of the long-term renovation strategies, and an estimation of the size and the value of the benefit is generally, unfortunately, not available, which means that a lot more awareness raising and analytical work needs to be done to valorize, to monetize, to make sure that the benefits are really quantified. And that's where we see a lot of work necessary. And with that, Frank, I would like to close and look forward to the discussion later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Oliver, and sorry for that, because I know how valuable your work is at the building performance, and it's really great to have your work done. And I will use also this occasion, because you are celebrating your 10th anniversary of your organization, and really I have to say that I'm reading every of your reports, because definitively I always learn very interesting things in comparison of different action in Europe. Saying that, I will directly shift to our last speaker today, last but not least, Adrian Joyce. Adrian Joyce is Secretary General of European Alliance of Companies for Energy Efficiency in Buildings, EuroAce. Most members are Europe's leading companies that provide products, equipment, and services dedicated to high energy performance in building. Adrian Joyce is also the campaign director of Renovate Europe campaign, and he is currently chairman of the Coalition for Energy Savings, and is working in this field since also several years. So Adrian, I give you the floor. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Frank, and thank you to REHVA for inviting us to make a presentation in this very rich session on the renovation wave. I hope that what I've got to add to the elements already presented will be enriching, and indeed, like the others, I look forward to reactions and answers to what I have prepared to say to you. And let me start by saying that EuroAce has reacted positively to the Renovation Wave Strategy and Action Plan. And we've done that because we read the strategy as a demonstration of how well the European Commission and high-level policymakers now understand the role that buildings can play for society and climate action. As a result of the strategy and the action plan, we know we're looking forward to a very busy year, because it includes a number of regulatory reviews that are going to come along. And EuroAce is already gearing up to be prepared for those reviews, in particular the revisions for the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. And I have no doubt that the members of REHVA are going to also be looking at this very closely, because it will provide an opportunity for improving the requirements in that directive. Among the ones that we are keen on in the buildings directive that have been announced are the examination of what would the effectiveness be of introducing minimum energy performance standards for all buildings undergoing renovation. It's something that we, and in particular the Renovate Europe campaign, has been asking for a number of years. And we see some very good research has been undertaken by think tanks in order to help the European Commission already understand the importance of introducing minimum energy performance standards. It's already been mentioned, but we're also looking forward to the new energy performance certificate framework, and very much like the idea of having a digital logbook for buildings that gathers together all of the various elements of information that are needed to allow good planning for achieving high energy performance in buildings. So the last item we welcomed, and sorry about my presentation flicking backwards and forwards, I hope that's not too disturbing for the audience. We saw that in the strategy there's an action plan and a listing of sources of funding. Now, we found that the listing of the sources of funding did not bring a great deal to the debate because it was really just that, and we would have much preferred to see more precise suggestions about introducing what we have called a renovation management facility, bringing all types of funding to all types of customers in a simplified manner moving forward. So there is still improvements we can make to the renovation strategy moving forward. But the question I've been asked to answer today is, how do we get the job done? And for me, the key word is mobilization. And it hasn't been used yet in this session, but mobilizing at all different levels is going to be really important. And I want to start with the national governments, member states. As we've just learned, the long-term renovation strategies that have been submitted to date actually leave a great deal to be desired. They're not achieving the requirements that those national governments themselves agreed to when they adopted the directive. And this, of course, is very disappointing. The second thing is we're aware that the huge recovery funding available at European level is going to be distributed through EU programs, again based on member state recovery and resilience plans. So we actually worry that the mobilization within the ministries is not enough, and that those recovery and resilience plans will not put buildings at the center of the actions moving forward, and that therefore the right amounts of money will not flow to building renovation. So we ask all stakeholders to be very active, to engage with the national governments, and to urge the ministries to include building renovation and energy performance improvements in national recovery and resilience plans. The second big family that I would like to mention that need mobilization are building owners themselves. Now, a complex constituency to address, and what I like to say is we in this community that would like to see more activity and more renovation works taking place must work better to find out how to increase the desire of building owners to take on the renovation challenge. To date, we've had too much market language where we talk about creating demand, and it hasn't worked. So we in EuroAce would like to rather think about how do we understand better the building owners' challenges, and how do we overcome them in such a way that they become desirous, so that they wish to do the work themselves because they see their own interest reflected. So mobilization there isn't just for the building owners themselves, but it's a mobilization of those who interface with the building owners to bring them along on the journey. I've already mentioned the financing at EU and national levels. I would point out that Renovate Europe, that we also run, have produced an infographic bringing together in one image all of the various funds that Stefan Moser so well presented at the start. Because the listing makes it look like it's a very complex field financing, and indeed it is complex. But you can find your way through it, and our infographic demonstrates which institution at the EU level is responsible for which fund, what a member state has to do to access that fund, and what we as stakeholders can do to help the member states access those funds. So more structuring around financing is going to be needed moving forward, and I will be working with colleagues on the Energy Efficiency Financial Institutions Group to help the Commission think their way through how this can be improved. And continuing the idea of mobilization, and it was mentioned that technical and project development support is going to be available, but our experience is that it needs to be much more mobilized at EU and at national level. What do I mean? One of the things that is a bit missing is that in the debate is technical support really is still perceived as helping a member state entity at either national, regional or local level simply to access funding. But that's just one part of technical assistance. And project development support, where the competences exist within the advising body around what measures will work in which segments of the building stock, is also a crucially important element to introduce. And I'm very happy, and Oliver's on the line, I know that the BPIE are working on a report on technical assistance that I think could become an instrumental overview of what's needed and what's being done at European level. And finally, for mobilization, the whole value chain. So right from the architects, which have been mentioned, and that's a personal pleasure because I'm an architect myself, right through to the facility managers at the other end of the chain, who are all of us have very important roles to play in achieving a successful renovation wave. So we need to work better together. We need to collaborate better together. We need to move away from confrontational contracts design into project team partnering, is the phrase that I like best. And in doing that, I believe digitalization can really help. So the rolling out of building information modeling and management, building digital twins of our buildings, using digitalization to measure and monitor real performance both before and after works, so that we end up having much better information about what works and what doesn't work, which will build confidence then in the banking sector and the finance sector, allowing more money to flow in our direction. And my final point, Frank, is that industrialization of renovation is also going to be important. We have such a large challenge, and the Commission itself has mentioned 35 million deep renovations by 2030. That's a doubling of the current rate. We think it should be a tripling, like Miapetra said. But industrialization is crucially important because if you get the right industrialization approach, you can improve the quality of the materials being used, of the performance of the elements being built, and you can significantly reduce disruption on site and therefore bring costs down. So industrialization has a win-win-win, to quote Miapetra, aspect to it that's underexploited at the moment. And if Europe takes on this renovation challenge through industrialized approaches based on digitalization, we can become the world leader in that industry, and then we can export that out to other parts of the world, very much in line with what, again, Miapetra called for. So I'm going to just end there, Frank, a little shorter than my allocated time to allow for questions, by just simply saying, look, we're at the end of the beginning, and it's time now to roll up our sleeves and really get on with the hard work of transforming our building stock in record time. So it's got a temporal, a technical, and a skills challenge to it. And for the audience, there's a couple of slides on EuroAce and our member companies afterwards, but that's it for now. I look forward to answering any questions that might come through from the floor. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you very much, Adrian, for your presentation. I will leave the floor immediately to Anita because I saw a couple of questions in the chat flow. So Anita, I think you can resume some of them, and we can open the floor for discussion.
Yes, thank you very much. We had many comments and questions, so we try to summarize them. Of course, many goes to Stefan, so if you allow me, I start with him also, referring to the previous question round. So if we talk about indoor climate quality, you mentioned that architectural quality is a key for citizens, but is the Commission considering, especially after COVID, this healthy indoor environment and air issues, and maybe promoting indoor air quality criteria, or giving some guidance to member states how to tackle them when doing deep renovation?
Thank you very much, Anita. And indeed, indoor air quality is very important. It is, of course, primarily for member states to ensure that, but there may need to be also some guidance from the Commission side. We don't have, I think, legislation in place regulating indoor quality more broadly, but that's something which may have to be looked at. Indeed, I cannot say that there will be a legislative proposal or legislation on that, but guidance, I would think, would be possible. But it's primarily for the local and national authorities to ensure that this is actually taken care of.
Thank you very much. Then there is a question on the similar topic to Oliver. So the examples that you showed about how different member states tackle the indoor air quality, environment quality benefits and issues seem to be quite diverse. So it seems that there is no harmonized approach yet detectable in these strategies. So do you think that by simply this requirement on defining the wider benefits on energy renovation can be a sufficient policy measure to actually improve indoor climate quality during renovation?
Well, I mean, I think it's a starting point, and of course, the member states. I think the reality is member states have a different awareness of the problem, and the question also often is to what degree were different ministries, different authorities involved in the drafting of the long-term renovation strategy. We know that many member states did not do extremely well on the consultation, on the public consultation with different stakeholders, which is also one of the requirements. And that means, of course, that different interest groups could not provide a lot of input into the national renovation strategy. And I think right now this result is just mirroring that. And I believe that, of course, in the member state's responsibility for energy in buildings and for renovation lies with energy ministries or with housing ministries or with environment ministries, different from country to country, and that ministries and authorities which deal with public health often are not included in those discussions. And I think that's something we need to change, and we see with the example that the awareness is starting to change, but I simply think there is still a long way to go.
Thank you very much. Then a question to Adrian that just arrived about mobilizing the different stakeholders. What about mobilization of installers and technicians themselves? A question was raised.
Yeah, the reality is that all along the full construction value chain, we're going to have to see more mobilization, and that obviously includes installers. And in fact, I'm happy the question was asked, because installers are often one of the most important actors for the homeowners, particularly because those who are interested in renovation often have their first and their longest contact with installers, and they rely on them for the best advice. So having installers who are fully informed about their place in the construction value chain and empowering them to give the right advice is one aspect of mobilization that I think will be challenging moving forward. But it is a challenge that can be assisted by certain activities of one-stop shops or competence centers, whereby the installers are on a register, so effectively certify that the quality and knowledge that they have meets the kind of performance levels that we in Europe need to achieve in our buildings, and therefore giving more confidence to building owners to employ them or to engage with them for various works. So yeah, the entire set of actors all along the value chain need to be mobilized, and I didn't individually mention each type of actor along the way, but I intended to say all of us, and let's get together and let's really exchange on how we can support and amplify our efforts moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adrian. And now a question that from different aspects maybe can go to all of you. How can the quality and the deepness of renovation be actually promoted during the implementation? So that's a round question. So Stefan, if you can explain what the Commission has as measures to monitor this implementation in the member states, but from the practitioner side, maybe how the Renovate campaign can help such a thing, and Oliver, how these think tanks can help in providing quality and assistance to achieve quality in the whole process. So that I would like to address to all of you, and starting with Stefan.
Thank you very much, Anita, and again, and to all participants. For that question, I think it's crucial that Commission will be in a dialogue process with the member states, but also multilaterally with the stakeholders and across the member states in relation to the quality of the renovation strategies, and also what member states prepare in relation to their recovery and resilience plans. And I think what Oliver and Adrian have done, in particular the analysis of the different strategies, will have to continue, will have to be reinforced, because it is there where we can really make a difference. The member states are in the driving seat, and there's usually goodwill on their side. I think we mutually benefit from learning from each other, identifying good practices. Spain has been mentioned as I would say the showcase example, the best practice across Europe. We have had the same impression already from our own analysis in the Commission. Some other member states have also good elements, and I think the more we can highlight and identify the good practices in the plans on various aspects, including, of course, on health, on air quality, and those aspects, but all the other aspects as well, the better it is. It's collective learning, and the stakeholders should scrutinize very carefully what is happening. From the Commission side, we will do all we can to give constructive feedback to the member states. The challenge will be that this has to be done in very, very short time. On the long-term renovation strategy, we have more time. We will come up very soon with an assessment of those strategies to the extent that we have received them, in order to spread the good practices rather. So it's rather the motivation is to facilitate really the further elaboration and possibly improvements to the strategies, and then come up with a further more complete assessment next year. But on the recovery plans, we have to act very quickly, and highlight at least issues which would have to be further developed by the member states. Of course, a lot of the challenges will have to be done and tackled at local and regional level. And I think what Adrian mentioned, the one-stop shops will play a crucial role. They can bring together the knowledge and advice which identifies also the good practices and really gives practical hints to the people seeking advice, citizens, but also the professionals active at the local and regional level. And there, I think the difference can be made. So it is there where I would say that the stakeholders, all stakeholders, should feed back and see how these knowledge elements, how the good practices can flow into the advice given by the one-stop shops, in particular when they will be further set up and elaborated.
Thank you, Oliver. If I could give you the same question.
Thanks, Anita. Well, I mean, of course, we see our role as providing critical advice, but also documenting really good practice, because we find that there are a lot of innovative policies in many member states, or on the regional or the municipal level, which are implemented by people who have the will and the skill and the ability to lead the debate and innovate. What we need to make sure is that these positive examples are being scaled up across Europe. So what Stefan already mentioned, to exchange more, to collaborate more, it's extremely important. It's extremely important to increase the exchange and the dialogue. And I think that's something where we need to bring the different leaders, the innovators, more together and strengthen that. And we, as an independent think tank, we will play our role in doing that as much as we can. We are constructive as much as we can, but we will also be critical when we see things not going in the right direction. That's how we see our role as an independent think tank based in Brussels, but also active in many member states through partners, through many projects.
Thank you. And Adrian, you also do national campaigns. So how do you see this quality of the renovation issue tackled and how the campaign can help this?
Thank you, Anita. Indeed, I'm happy you brought up the campaign, because we have 45 partners in total in the campaign, of which 17 are national partners at national level. And we have taken our own advice, and we've been mobilizing them over the last months in order to be in contact with their ministries. And we have had good reports back of fruitful contacts for the national recovery and resilience plans. And that was greatly assisted because the European Commission recommended in a specific guidance note on the Renovate flagship of the European Green Deal that member states should include building renovation in their national recovery and resilience plans. So our mobilization of our national partners is doing two things. One, it's giving our national partners, we give them ammunition from the European level that they can use as arguments towards the national level. And the second thing is they feed back to us at European level what's happening at national level. So we've actually established a kind of a to and fro exchange that's enriching our knowledge of what's going on and allowing us to come back with further advice or indeed best practices from other countries to all of our national partners, getting them motivated. And the second aspect I'd quickly like to just mention is that all of the companies that I represent take quality extremely importantly, and they have all got research underway to ensure that the materials and products they put on the market not only comply with all of the European legislation, but that they are exemplary products that can lead to high energy performance in buildings moving forward. So we think we're doing our bit as best we can for the time being. We're ready to do more, and we look forward to doing more in the future. So I'll stop there, Anita.
Thank you very much. And looking at the clock, we have to close soon. So I would just like to summarize some conclusions that I think we could draw from these discussions. That we know that the renovation wave, the implementation of European policies, depends very much on member states. So it is now also time to target them and lobby national governments, and we are all joining efforts in this. And also that the renovation wave is a great opportunity, can be a great opportunity to achieve indoor environmental quality improvements while doing renovations, if we do it rightly. So our sector can be, of course, very important in helping this. And technical assistance, indeed, this should not be only about getting the money to the project, but also making this project very high quality and performance after in use in buildings. Maybe the last comment and question what we had is that actually comfort and these additional benefits of health and comfort-related benefits could be turned into an incentive, not talk about only energy savings for energy renovation, but these savings might be much higher than actually the money saved by decreased energy use simply. So that could be a good argument for policymakers and practitioners alike. And thank you very much for all the questions. For those who did not get an answer, we try to answer them after the session. And I hand back the floor to Frank, thanking all the panelists.
Thank you, Anita, for the moderation. Thank you very much to all our panelists. I think it was a broad vision and very clear vision of, as Adrian said, this is the end of a beginning. So I fully agree with your sentence. No, it's really time to put ourselves in the work. And we spoke a lot about the retrofit rate and that we need to increase. But I want to emphasize that also we have to look at really local scale, and because we did that work at the French level, and we found out that there is a lot of differences with a renovation rate that is can be up to 5% in some big cities, where it doesn't exist in other areas. So that's the average of the country at the end. And we have to look at that, because also in some place there is no demand even for the retrofitted flats that are not answering all the actual needs in terms of comfort, in terms of quality of living. So there is also a question about the needs of our citizens. So I think it will work, as you all mentioned, if we put in the center of the thinking what are the needs of the users, what are the needs of the citizens, what do they expect in terms of comfort in their house, in their working space, what do they expect in terms of services and transportation around. So I know it's quite complex, but we now have the tools that we didn't have 10 years ago, thanks to digitalization, to work with complexity and to tackle and to answer all the different items that are around this idea. And as you all mentioned, and it was also emphasized by the MAP Miapetra Kumpula-Natri, it's clear that now it's time to work on it. And I really want to thank the work of the Commission and the DG Energy, but also what's done at the DG Environment, because thanks to their work and the way they can present proposals to the European Commission, the European Assembly and Parliament, it also is very useful. So saying that, I want to thank very much all our panelists. Thank you very much, Mr. Moser. Thank you, Oliver Rapf. Thank you, Adrian Joyce. Thanks very much to the REHVA staff, and a special thanks to Anita for the organization of this seminar. And we look forward to see you at the latest next year, and we look forward to do it with physical presence, and we hope that we could meet again and drink a coffee together and have a lunch for the next year event, because first of all, I miss you, and second, I really think that it will mean that we will be out of this crisis, and we'll expect that it's soon will be ended. So thank you very much to all of you, and I wish you a nice end of the day, a nice end of the week, and hope to see you very soon. And take care of yourselves, take care of your family. As you see, I'm also locked down at home, so I wish you all the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.